If you're watching this video, you're probably wondering how much it costs to do van life for an entire year, or you're already doing van life and you want to know if you spent more or less than us. My name is Megan and I typically travel with my partner full-time in our van, but recently we decided to sell it to pursue international travel overseas without a van. There are a few things that I want to cover in this video. The first being how much we spent in 2022 doing van life. I also want to cover some budgeting challenges that we had on the road and share some tips on how to save money while you're doing van life. At the end of this video, I'm going to share with you our plans for the next year and how much we're budgeting for full-time travel overseas. So without further ado, how much we spent. Between Matt and I'm the one who typically does the money and the finances, so in this video you're not going to see him, mostly because he's taking a nap right there. But you're just going to get me today, which is fine because I made these spreadsheets anyways. So let's start with how much we spent in 2022 while living van life. And I will tell you right now, it's much more than we thought we were gonna spend and much more than we wanted to spend. Just a disclaimer, I'm not gonna be going into any business expenses. Matt and I are content creators full-time and that's how we make a full-time living. But in this video, I'm not gonna go through those things because I just feel like it's not really relevant to this conversation where we wanna budget for living expenses on the road. For these expenses, I broke it up into 4 categories. The first one is van life. These are expenses that will only incur if you do van life. The second one is regular spending. How much did we spend on gear and experiences and things like that? Third one is non-van life travel because we did travel outside of our van. And the fourth is eating. So let's start with eating because whether you live in a van or a house or you travel full time, you're gonna eat. Our original budget was $800 for eating and unfortunately, we spent a lot more. Our total for the year is $14,635.93. That comes out to $1,219.66 a month. So this includes groceries, eating out, alcohol expenses, and going to coffee shops to work and things like that. And something that we learned living on the road is we should have accounted for the times where we wanted to get out of the van because I realized that we spent a lot of money just getting out of the van in general. So going to coffee shops to work and eating out because we didn't want to mess up the van and have to clean it all up and things like that. So that's how much we spent eating. Hopefully next year will be a little bit better. The next category we're going to get into is the van life expenses. There are certain expenses that you just need to have when you live in your vehicle. So between all of these expenses, we spent $12,194.28 for the entire year. When you live in a van, you will have van life expenses, and this is how much we spent. Auto insurance. You need to spend money on gas. And we had to get a gym membership to make sure that we can shower on the road. We needed to get it serviced every once in a while. We needed oil changes. A lot of these expenses had to do with the car itself. The next category is non-van related expenses. This year we went on a big trip cross country by train. We also had to book a car, and then we went to Puerto Vallarta for a few weeks before we came home back to the van. We also ended up getting a couple hotels and Airbnbs while we lived in the van because we just needed to get out of it. And that's something that I would definitely recommend that you do is add in a hotel and Airbnb budget if you're gonna live in your van full time because inevitably you're gonna wanna get out of it. So that total is $2,900.36, and that includes some expenses for travel that we're gonna do in 2023. So don't worry, this wasn't just all 2022 expenses. The last category is just regular spending. So experiences, things that we picked up on the road, and things like that. Stuff that you wouldn't necessarily call a necessity, but we spent it anyways. So we spent an extra $8,060.17 on those things that we probably didn't have to, but we did. I would like to disclose that we spent more than I wanted to this year, and hopefully next year we can spend a little bit less. So the total spend for a year of van life in 2022 was $41,790.74. While that seems like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, we can never give back those memories that we gained from being able to do this. So I'm gonna leave it off with this. It was money well spent. Could we have cut some corners? Yes. But would I take it back? Absolutely not. How did we end up spending more money than we thought? Well, budgeting while traveling ended up being a lot harder than I thought. Here's Here are some reasons why it was hard to cut down on the spending on food. A lot of the times the way to spend money is buying in bulk in big quantities. Well, we weren't able to do that because we lived in a van. The second reason is we didn't have one grocery store that we really knew in and out. We were limited to the grocery stores that were within our vicinity and the prices that they had. So it was really hard for us to budget that grocery expense because we weren't able to do what we used to do, which is know our grocery store, go there for the specific deals, and save a lot of money. We also ended up dining out a lot more than we thought we would, and I realized that we did this because we wanted to get out of the van. And that's something to account for if you're doing van life. You're gonna spend a little bit of money just to get out of the van. So now that I covered some of the challenges, here are some tips to kind of combat that. My first tip is to make sure you get the appropriate credit cards. So there are credit cards that will give you cash back on gas, dining out, groceries, all of those things. So make sure that you guys have the appropriate ones. Travel credit cards specifically might help you with cutting down your spending and getting some cash back while you're traveling on the road. I will do a little disclaimer. If you're not responsible with credit cards and you're not able to pay your credit cards off at the end of the month every single month, then I would stay away from the credit card game. But if you're a responsible spender, then doing the credit card thing is definitely gonna help you put more money back into your pocket after you spend. The second thing is make sure you're tracking your spending. So Matt and I both use Mint, and we aggregate all of our accounts to Mint so that we can pull a report at the end of the year and do analytics like this for you guys. Mint is a free tool and it's been around for a long time, but it'll help you budget, it'll help you see what you're spending, and it'll categorize all of your transactions for you so you know which category you're overspending and underspending. My third tip is to make sure that you're using apps like Gas Buddy and what is that other one? Matt knows it. I don't know off the top of my head, but all of the links are going to be linked in the description. My fourth tip is to make sure you actually have a budget. There's one thing to track your expenses and there's another to have a budget. All right, since we are talking about budgeting, let's move on to 2023's budget for international travel outside of the van. I don't really know what to call international travel anymore now that we had lived in a van, because you can definitely international travel in a van. So should we call it like house travel? Hotel travel, but we're not necessarily going to be being in hotels. I don't know. You guys tell me, what should we call it? International travel without a van? It's kind of wordy. Anyways, here is our proposed budget. For lodging, we're hoping not to spend more than $1,500 a month. Since we're trying to stay in a place for a month at a time, we're gonna get some big discounts on Airbnb and some other places because we're staying there for longer. So we're hoping to keep that expense down because that's the expense that will kill our budget. The next category is getting around, and this includes flights to and from countries, public transportation, any rides like sharing rides, taxis, those things. We want to spend less than $6,000 a year. And I think this is totally doable if we stay in places that are walkable and we take public transportation as much as possible. Renting cars will definitely crush this budget for sure. So $6,000 a year is budgeted for $500 a month. The next expense is eating, and we're really hoping to cut down on eating this year. One, going to countries where our US dollar will stretch a lot further. So we want to spend $800 or less a month on eating. We also realized that in the van, we ended up going to a lot of breweries, wineries, and getting a lot of alcohol. And this year we're hoping to cut that down a lot. The last category is just regular spending. We're hoping that since we're moving from a big van to some suitcases that we're not gonna spend that much money on stuff. And I'd rather allocate these funds to experiences, tours, and things to do in these countries. So that $6,000 a year will equal $500 per month. You're probably wondering about some of the fixed expenses that we might have. Fortunately, we do have a business, so a lot of our fixed expenses go into the business spending categories, but the small amount of fixed expenses that we have are just gonna go into the spending. Okay, that brings our total to $39,400 a year. If we can do that, I think we can conquer the world. So there are a lot of ways for us to get things for free. Like we use trusted house sitters to house sit so that we can stay in places without having to spend money. We also create content full time. So if we work with any tourism boards or places like hotels, Airbnbs while we're on the road, we might be able to cut that cost down. This year is going to be all about getting creative with how much money we can spend and really trying to not spend the same amount as last year, even though we're switching to a method of travel that essentially should be more expensive. At the end of 2023, we're gonna find out if we were able to stick to this budget or not. If you guys subscribe, then you'll definitely know when that video comes out by the end of the year, but we hope you do anyway so that you can come with us on our journeys in 2023. The first flight to Europe happens at the end of March. If you're thinking about being a full-time traveler in the future, I hope this video was helpful for you. It definitely helped us with learning how we could have done differently and how to do better in the next year. We have so many adventures planned for the next year, and we're so excited to share that with you, so we will see you in the next one.